Alright guys, Sanjay Uche here. Sorry I'm a bit late. Didn't get to watch the episode yesterday. Just watched it today actually. But yeah, my review on Dragon Ball Super Episode 54. Inheritors of the Saiyan Blood, Trunks' resolve or determination. Uh, after a 1 week break, and coming back to the series, it's fair to say this was another build-up episode. But it was still a good episode nonetheless. So to start off, we see Trunks doing some mental or image training, which I find to be interesting since we haven't seen this in this series since the Namek Saga, I believe. And we see Trunks visualizing himself fighting Black. And this is where I find it to be really interesting, considering that it's his own imagination, so to speak, and he's still getting his ass kicked. But I guess it's still legit because taking into consideration he's fought Black so many times that I guess even in his own imagination he doesn't feel he can defeat Black, which I found to be interesting. Moving on, we see Bulma continuing to work on the time machine and a few funny scenes here and there with the Pilaf gang, but it's either here or there. It wasn't really that funny, so to speak. But one thing I do like about it, though, it continues to give the side characters purpose, so to speak. So compared to GT, but Continuing on, after that we see Trunks continuing his image training, and what's interesting to speak, we see him even spit out blood at one point, which is another interesting aspect, I suppose. Then we get to, we start getting to the meat of the episode, where we see Goku, Beerus, and Whis return to Earth. So, upon their return, they start to update everyone, well, specifically Trunks, on what they found out investigating in Universe 10, where Zamasu is concerned. So, Whis goes on to explain to Trunks that Zamasu and Black are actually, well, based on their findings, they find them to be two different persons. He was saying that while they do have similar ki, the ki they felt from Black was more of an evil one compared to Zamasu, which they didn't really sense much evil in him. But Beerus goes on to note that for now that might be the case, and he might take an evil, well, he might gradually descend into the darkness, so to speak, down the line. And upon hearing that Goku actually fought him and defeated Zamasu as well, Trunks begins to question. Oh, one thing to note, he also finds out that he fought Beerus. So with this, he begins to question if he's even really needed in this whole conflict against Black, and that he should probably just leave it to Goku or Vegeta. Then we switch over to Zamasu and Gowasu back in Universe 10, where we see, as I mentioned in my previous review, with the whole act of Zamasu making the tea being used as a plot device, it returns in this episode, and they mentioned it in this episode that the tea is now bitter. So I guess take that as it is. As a gradual descent into darkness, like a hint, so to speak. But after that, we see Gowasu observing this race of beings called, well, this world called Babari, which is, I guess, a pun on barbarians. And we see them as a savage bunch, which I guess you could call them dinosaurs. But anyway, yeah. So Zamasu was basically disgusted by this, and it continues to fuel his hatred towards humans, or mortals, so to speak. And Gowasu is basically saying that maybe they'll change in 1,000 years, which Zamasu doubts, and Zamasu suggests just exterminating them, which in this episode should be noted that it's becoming apparent that Zamasu is gradually finding it easier to express his, I guess, hatred. He's becoming more content with expressing it, that's something to note there. But they go on to use the time rings. Well, yeah, the ones we saw in the previous episode, the silver one specifically, travel 1,000 years into the future, where we see that the race, that particular race, hasn't really evolved much, which again fuels Zamasu's hatred to say that as long as humans exist, there will never be peace. So that's something interesting to note. Oh, and one more piece of information. We find out that the green time rings are actually essentially created every time there's a change in history. But moving on, we move on to, I guess, what the episode title represents, and we get a training session between Trunks and Vegeta, in which Trunks powers up to Super Saiyan 2 initially, and then the funny part is he asks Vegeta to transform into a Super Saiyan 3, which he only laughs at, and immediately transforms to Super Saiyan Blue. Trunks knows that he can't feel his ki, but he puts 2 and 2 together and figures that Goku can also transform into a Super Saiyan Blue, which adds to the way Trunks feels in that he doesn't feel that he needs to really do anything. So essentially, this training session, it's not really a training session. It becomes more of a pep talk for Trunks. But it's interesting to know that we see Trunks pulling off a smart move. We see the return of the Ultra Super Saiyan, or Super Saiyan Grade 3 form, which he uses to try to outsmart Vegeta. Because the gist of this training session is, if Trunks can land one hit on Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta, he wins. So what he does, he transforms to Super Saiyan Grade 3 to basically make Vegeta, basically try to fool Vegeta, and then once Vegeta tries to attack, he transforms back to Super Saiyan 2. But it ends up being a pep talk, and Trunks finds new resolve to basically better himself, not just for Black, but any threat that comes after Black, so to speak. But at the end of the episode, we see the Omni King calling Beerus and Whis and mentioning to them that he wants to speak to Goku. What for? We don't know. But I find it totally interesting. It could be related to the tournaments, the upcoming tournaments, which may be after this arc. Who knows? I couldn't tell you. I could probably do a predictions video, but probably not necessary. But this episode on a whole was pretty funny. Well, not funny, sorry. It was pretty good. It serves as more build-up and an advancement in Trunks, where his character and resolve is concerned. Because, as mentioned, he really felt that he wasn't really necessary in the whole conflict, and feeling that way basically at the beginning of the episode to, well, from the middle of the episode, and resolving that and finding resolve to, better himself as a character, as a fighter by the end of the episode, which I feel is good pacing and more build up. So yeah, guys, that's my review. One thing I do find interesting though is the 4 green time rings, which each one is created each time a new timeline is created. For those of you who may not know, there is a possibility that there are 4 different timelines within the Dragon Ball franchise, all thanks to Trunks' time machine. Basically, Trunks and Cell traveling through time. That's one cool aspect to note, which I actually like. Any other thing that I liked or didn't like about the episode? I must say, for this kind of episode being built up, the animation was actually decent. It was okay. It was cool. I really have no complaints. I especially love the animation towards the end, especially in the Trunks versus Vegeta sparring session. And then the flashback that we got with Trunks and Vegeta in this hyperbolic time chamber room or the room of spirit of time, whatever you want to call it. It was good seeing them actually doing new animation rather than using Kai footage, which I find to be a new trend that they're pulling off, which I really like. And yeah, even that new animated scene, it's actually new. We didn't even get that scene before, like in the old series, so that's pretty cool as well. But apart from that, there wasn't really much to talk about otherwise in this episode. Just Trunks' progression in terms of his resolve, him being updated on the results of Goku and Whis and Beerus' investigation, Trunks and Vegeta sparring, more progression where Zamasu is concerned, which I really like. It's like a gradual progression, and it's really interesting to see if he's going to turn to be black or go on to create black. More hints being dropped here and there, which I like. All in all, there's not really much problems with this episode. I didn't really find that there were any problems to me, personally speaking. It was good. So, there you go. That's my review on Dragon Ball Super episode 54. One thing to know, there's no episode next week. I'm going to be doing a video on that probably tomorrow or later on, because the episode titles have been leaked where that's concerned. So I'll be doing a video on that. And yeah, that's it, guys. That's my review. I know I feel like I'm all over the place with this one, but sorry about that. It's pretty late and I'm pretty tired, so yeah. But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next